Welcome to the Strong, Single and Human podcast, a real look at single parenting, how to navigate the ups and downs of life with kids on your own while keeping sane. We cover all manner of subjects from domestic violence, dealing with childhood trauma, through to fussy eaters and how to help your kids become resilient. I'm your host, Claire Martin. Welcome. This week's guest, Dr. Mort Orman, MD, is an internal medicine physician and a 40-year anger elimination and stress elimination expert. He has written 23 books on how to eliminate anger and stress without using drugs, relaxation exercises, or other traditional management techniques. He is the creator of the 10-session Angry No More Anger Elimination Program, the Anger Internal Causes Framework, and the Ultimate Anger Elimination System. Dr. Orman has led over 100 anger and stress elimination workshops for doctors, nurses, lawyers, business owners, entrepreneurs, and other professionals, the clergy, and even the F.B.I. He has also been the official sponsor of National Stress Awareness Month in the US every April since 1992. He is here to talk about his newest book, Dr. Orman's Life-Changing Anger Cure, which was released in April 2024 and is now available on Amazon. This is the Strong, Single and Human podcast. Hi, Mort Orman. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me, Claire.
Oh, no. Thank you for coming on board, because we're going to talk about a subject that's, I think, close to every single parent who's been in a domestic violence situation or whatever, which is anger management, right? And I'm sure there have been times I've had to manage my anger when talking to my ex or when dealing with my child. So yes. So you've been dealing with anger management for 40 odd years. How did you get into it?
Actually, I don't really do a lot with anger management. I do what I call anger elimination, which is different. So anger management is like, once the anger is built up, what do you do with it? How do you manage it? I'd like to work on the front side, what's causing the anger to occur and how can you stop it from happening? So that there's nothing you have to manage once you know how to do that well. So I'm more of an anger elimination expert, and I have been for 40 years, which puts me in a different league than most of the other anger experts who are mostly anger management experts. Yeah.
Well, why would you want to manage it, right? You need to stop it.
Yeah, that's what I always thought.
You need to not get there first, which is fair enough.
Yeah.
So why anger? Why anger more? What? Because there's lots of other different subjects you could go into.
Yeah, well, a couple things. I had a lot of anger in my younger years when I went through college and my medical school and medical training and my first few years in practice. So I had a lot of anger and I couldn't control it. It was one of the few things that I felt like a failure about. It constantly happened, and no matter what I tried, anger management, stress management, whatever, I woke up every day, I was the same angry guy, getting angry just as often. So it was very frustrating and demoralizing because I had succeeded in most things that I tried to succeed at. And I was successful as a physician, but in my personal life, I just had a lot of anger. I had a lot of anxiety. I had relationship failures one after another. So I wasn't really happy about my personal life, but I was happy about my professional life. So, and then the other thing is, being a physician, taking care of patients over time, we get to see, we can easily spot the angry people from the not so angry people. And we see what happens to all our whole group of patients over time. And you get to see that the angry people have more heart attacks and strokes and high blood pressure and addictions and divorces and all kinds of bad stuff happens more frequently in that group than your patients that don't have a lot of anger tendencies. And then, so there I was sitting with my own anger and watching what happens to people with anger over time. And I'm saying, I don't really want that to be my future. So that drove me into personal development work, where after a couple of years of studying through a number of different programs, I finally figured out what was going on within me. Whenever I got triggered to be angry, that I hadn't understood before, and they didn't teach me in medical school or anyplace else. Yeah. And then that opened the door. And that opened the door for me to have my own personal breakthrough. And then once I saw that actually you could eliminate anger, which I didn't even know was possible. If you'd asked me back in my 20s and 30s, or my angry days, if I ever thought it was possible to not be an angry person, I would have said, I think that's just my personality. I think that's just my DNA. That's just the way I'm always going to be. So I didn't even think it was possible. So once I saw that it was actually possible, I said, I've got to, and I understood the role that anger plays in health. As a doctor, I said, I've got to get this out into the world. I'm going to make people aware that there is an approach to anger that's much better than anger management or stress management or whatever, because it's so important to people's health and to their happiness,
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it is, right? And
yeah.
And the impact on somebody's health, we don't realize, right? Getting stressed out when you're driving the car or whatever, right? It is a fight or flight reaction, really. So and you're going into fight mode, right? You're going into defensive fight mode, which has a physiology, it has a physical effect on your body, as well as emotional. And it can affect
there's stuff
everything.
going on. There's stuff that we can feel. We can feel sometimes when our body is stirred up, which isn't good. But there's stuff going on that we can't feel that's detrimental as well when we're angry or have other strong emotions going on all the time. So it's we can't always feel the impact of what the damage that's being done inside. So
exactly.
Yeah.
So okay, I'm going to go back to basics, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure everyone listening to this thinks they know what anger is, right? But what is anger quintessentially?
Well, I think most people know what it is. What we don't know is where it comes from. We're very confused, and actually we've been lied to. We've been misinformed. We've been given a lot of bad information about how anger happens. And but I think most people know when they feel angry. Although there are some people, depending upon the family you grew up in or the situation you grew up in, it might have been that you weren't allowed to have much anger. So there are some people who don't really feel anger very strongly, even though they might be angry, they might not feel it. And then there's the other extreme that people just really fly off the handle very easily and very demonstrative. So there's all range of how people experience anger. But for the most part, most people kind of know when they're angry. The problem is they misunderstand where it's coming from. So we have this kind of common sense, simplistic model that, I call it a one causes two model, 1-2 model. So something happens that we don't like, or somebody does something, our kids misbehave, our spouse or ex does something that drives us up a wall, and then we feel the emotion of anger, and it looks like 1 cause 2, like a direct cause effect situation. Okay, and that's how we understand it. That's how I understood it, through my 20s and 30s, where I couldn't do anything about it. It turns out anger is more complicated than that. There's actually 4 steps in the process. It's not 1, 2. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. With one being the triggering thing that we all see, that bothers us. 4 being the anger we feel in our bodies. Okay. And then there's 2 steps in the middle that are invisible, but they're happening inside of our brains and inside of us.
And we own them. We can own them, can't we?
They are ours.
They're us.
They're already owned. They're part of our, they come from our brain and our body. So they're inside of us, but they're invisible. So we don't see them.
Okay.
So one analogy I give to this, again, being in medicine, it's like with regard to our understanding of emotions, it's like the days when we didn't understand infectious diseases. And we saw somebody would get sick, and then they'd get around a healthy person, and that healthy person would get sick a couple of days later. And we didn't understand what the mechanism was. Okay, back in the old, hundreds of years ago, whatever. And then somebody discovered bacteria and viruses, and other infectious agents, which are invisible. And they said, oh, okay, now we see there's a third step in the process that's invisible. So sick person, transmits some kind of an invisible infectious agent, and then the well person gets it, and then they get sick. Okay, so we expanded our awareness of the process, and then later on, somebody discovered the immune system, which is also in our body. And the immune system has a lot to do with, if we come in contact with a virus or bacteria, does it actually make us sick? Sometimes the immune system catches it right away and defeats it, and we don't even know anything happened. Sometimes it just reduces the intensity of it, so we don't get real sick, we just get a mild illness. And sometimes it doesn't do much of anything against the invading bacteria or so it turns out that this thing that looked like a two-step process, sick person to well person, that's all we could see. When you understand there's two visible steps in the middle, and I'm oversimplifying it in this model, but it's just like an analogy. So it's like there's the virus is invisible, the immune system is invisible. Well, with our emotions, it's the same thing. We have the triggering event that we see, we have the emotion that we feel, and in the middle are these two things going on inside of us that we have no awareness of, but they're there, they're real.
Wow. And we're not aware of them.
Not aware of it. You said you're from IT. Your background is IT when we talked before the recording, and I said that's really relevant. Well, our emotions come from the internal programming that's gotten established in our brains and our bodies throughout our lifetime. They get programmed to react in certain ways, to perceive in certain ways, to think in certain ways. It's all programming. It's all conditioning, and it's inside our body, and that's what the triggering event interacts with. And we look at the world through certain filters that have been programmed into us. And in our society, throughout our society, there's three main filters that cause anger. And that's what most people don't understand. They don't understand that's like the bacteria or the virus is actually causing the mischief, but they're invisible, so you can't see them. So that's what I do. I teach people first that there are three filters that they need to know about, and then I show them what those filters are, and then I show them what they can do with that knowledge once they understand what's going on inside of them that they were blind to before. And it's amazing how much control you can have over your emotions if you understand these invisible processes that produce them, that we are not being educated about.
No, and I agree with you. I mean, crikey, I'm trying to think. 7 years ago, 7 years has gone very quickly. COVID and all of those things have happened in those 7 years. But 7 years ago, I had a heart operation because I had an irregular heartbeat, and I believe it was because of anger, various different emotions that I was going through, stresses that I was going through, that I suppressed because I had a 2-year-old and I was going through a separation and all of these things, and wanted him to have the most normal life that he could have. But he nearly had the most normal life he could have without me in it, right? So, so I had to look 7 years ago at how I dealt with things and what I was doing to make situations worse, like shouting at people in the traffic because they were going like 20 Ks below the speed limit or whatever, and I needed to get to work and things like that. And so I had to reframe the situation that was happening to me so that I made it a safe situation, i.e., they were saving me from a sliding doors moment down the road where if I'd have been 20 Ks faster, I would have crashed into a big truck and died, right? I know that's a bit drastic, but that sort of, it was telling myself a different story. It's not about, oh, come on, hurry up. You're just doing this to annoy me. They didn't know who I was. Right. They didn't know I was behind them. So yes.
That's right.
Yes.
And good for you for doing that.
Oh, I had to.
That self-awareness, that self-healing. But notice that you wouldn't have to do the reframing if your brain wasn't already framing it for you in the ways that made you angry.
Okay, so come on then. Tell me these three filters that you were talking about.
They're very easy. They're very easy.
Because I want to I don't want to have to do too much work reframing this stuff.
Be happy to tell you. And by the way, as I explain these, people should write these down and put them on an index card or put them in their cell phone or whatever, someplace where they can refer to them because again, they're invisible. So you're going to get angry and you're not going to see these things. So you need something to remind you what they are. Okay. But once you understand them, you'll be able to remember them or refresh your memory pretty easily by writing them down on something. So there's three ways we have to be looking at things in order to get angry. So the first is somebody's doing something bad or wrong that they shouldn't be doing. Somebody or something. So we notice we don't get angry if we think somebody's doing something wonderful or terrific or fantastic. It's only if we think they're doing something bad and wrong. So if you're driving and people are driving slowly and you're getting angry, you're thinking that driving slowly is a bad and wrong thing that they shouldn't be doing. Okay, particularly when you're in a hurry to get somewhere, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's all about me.
They should know. They should know. They should be able to know that you're in a hurry.
It's all about me.
Yeah, and they should speed up, right? Okay. So, so the first thing is we have to see through the filter of they're doing something bad and wrong they shouldn't be done. The second filter is there's some hurt or harm or negative impact from the wrong behavior. So we're being negatively impacted, or somebody we care about is being negatively impacted. So in the driving example, you're trying to get somewhere. People are driving slowly. So you're judging them to be doing something bad and wrong, and you're feeling negatively impacted that you can't get where you want to go as fast as you want to get there. So that's the second filter, a negative impact of some kind. And the third filter is blame. And it's usually a very narrow view of blame. It's I call it unilateral blame. You're just looking at that person who's doing the wrong thing in your mind. And you're only seeing them as being responsible. You're not seeing any other causes that might be involved. You're not seeing if you might have been involved. You're not seeing if other things in their life might have been going on. You're just seeing their behavior, and you're saying that's the whole story. Their bad behavior caused this hurt and harm, and they're totally to blame. Boom, I'm angry. That's how you get anger. You get those three filters, and you believe they're true. Okay?
Can you judge? Do you have to have all three? Or
yes.
You have to have all three?
And you will have all three, because that's how anger gets generated. And it's the way anger gets generated in you. It's the way it gets generated in me. It's the way it got generated in human beings thousands of years ago. And it's the way it'll get generated in human beings thousands of years from now. If your kid gets angry, they're looking through those three filters. If your spouse gets angry, they're looking for those three filters. If your boss gets angry, those three filters. No matter... And there are tens of thousands of things that can trigger us or trigger different people based on our sensitivities. And, there's all kinds of people running around right now getting angry at stuff that we didn't used to get angry about, but they decided to get angry about it. So it's a unique trigger to them, okay, in their filter. They're judging whoever's doing whatever to be bad, doing something bad and wrong. So it doesn't matter what the myriad of thousands of different things are. They ultimately all boil down to, in some manner, somebody's doing something bad and wrong, there's some hurt or harm being produced, and that person's unilaterally to blame. That's the program, like a computer program, that produces the outcome of anger in human beings. Now, other emotions similarly have programs just like that. They have different filters. Like anxiety has a different set of filters. Guilt has a different set of filters. But all of our reality is being filtered by our brains, because that's what it does. It doesn't take in everything that's happening as it happens and present everything to us. It simplifies it, it chunks it down and says, this is important, this is not important. It gives us a distorted view from the get-go. So so our filters are always leaving things out, not telling us the whole story. And so we're always getting these simplified perceptions that may or may not be close to the truth. And a lot of times they're not. And
while you were just talking there, I was just thinking about all the various different other things that we have in our lives, like the fight or flight and things like that, right? So did these filters serve a purpose when we were out there in the wilderness without our houses and our jobs and our cars and our Instagram and our Facebook and all of that stuff? So these filters, so what would these filters have served us in the wilderness as such?
Yeah, well, if you go back to prehistoric times when our brains were forming and becoming, what they are today, we had to make these fast decisions. You had to assess a situation. You hear a rustle in the bush. Is it, do you run or do you stay? Is it a threat or is it safe? Another a person, another human being comes up to you. Is it somebody from your group or not from your group? Is it a friend or a foe? We're always making these either or quick decisions. Do I go? Do I stay? And our brain still has that mechanism from hundreds of thousands of years ago, where that's what it meant, that's how it kept us alive. It developed the ability to make these quick snap decisions. And again, it's not trying to get the whole picture of everything. It's just, okay, I just need to know, do I run or do I stay? Give me a quick answer.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to
Or
be
do I
doesn't have to be
freeze?
perfect.
Because then if I freeze, they might not see me, sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be complete. It doesn't have to cover everything. Just tell me what to do, or let me figure out what to do. Okay. So I don't get eaten, or so I can live another day, And every one of those filters, each of those three filters I just mentioned to you, is a variant of either or thinking. So if you're looking at something and you're saying it's bad, you're not seeing it as good.
No, that's right.
If you're looking at something and saying I see harm being produced here, you're not seeing anything positive happening here, or somebody being benefited. And if you're looking at blame, you're not seeing somebody as being innocent or somebody else as being to blame. So all of these filters come from that either or way our brain works that we inherited, and they did serve a very valuable purpose. Otherwise, they wouldn't have evolved to the degree that they have. And then to make it worse, everything in our society keeps reinforcing that, because we're very into polarization and either or. Good guy, bad guy, evil.
I'd love the
Republican,
movies,
Democrat, whatever the different political parties are in different countries and stuff like that. We're always pitting something against another thing, which is just reinforcing these filters, which is how we see the world. Yeah. And actually, the world isn't happening that way, but we're seeing it that way and reacting emotionally to what we're seeing, and what our brain is telling us is true, as opposed to how the world really is.
Well, and this is the thing, right? Do you think, and I want to get on to how we actually manage these three filters and we change anger, but do you see that people have got more angry over the years of dealing with anger elimination, right? Do you see that people have got more angry with the amount of technology and things like that they've actually got their hands on as such? Have you seen any changes?
There are a lot of, yes, I think the answer is yes. And I think there's a lot of factors. So like I said, the technology gives us more things to be angry about, or to be upset about, or to go wrong, or to distract us or interfere, or this or that, or whatever. But then also you got to realize the media plays a big role in this. The media feeds our emotions. That's their business plan. So the media knows these filters very well. The media knows how to get us angry, they just feed us stories that have this same three themes. Somebody did something bad, wrong. Somebody was hurt or harmed. They were 100% responsible to blame. That's the whole story. Don't ask any other questions. Don't look beyond that. That's the only thing you need to know. And all you need to believe that. And because we're telling you. Okay. And if you believe all those narratives in that way, and you don't think for yourself about, wait a minute, there's more to the story than what they're telling me, then you will get the emotional reaction of anger, which is exactly what they want you to have. They do the same thing with fear. They know the filters that produce fear, so they can make you scared anytime they want to. And when it's in their best interest to make you scared, they'll push those buttons by creating their narratives and sending those narratives out. And because our communication systems have gotten so much richer, and we get these communications more every day and more broadly every day, it just keeps feeding in to reinforce the filters that we already had to begin with. So, there's very few people, sounding the alarm, saying, you got to defend yourself against this stuff, because it's polluting your brain, and it's making you misperceive how life actually is happening, and causing you all this emotional turmoil, which you don't really need, and except in a few occasions, anger is good and maybe beneficial in a person's life at a particular stage in their life. Let's say getting angry could be a good thing for that person if they're in a bad situation and they need anger to motivate themselves. That could be good. But the general, the kind of anger that we're seeing around today, where we're just getting angry at everything all the time, and it's not necessarily serving any good purpose. That's the stuff that the media and politicians and social media and all that stuff is feeding into us, and literally conditioning us, programming us, to use an IT term, programming us to think and perceive in the ways we're being, programmed to think. And we're literally being brainwashed and hypnotized constantly.
I know, it's frightening. It is frightening. And I've got friends who were concerned, because I come from the UK, right? I've got friends who were concerned about the political situation in the UK and Brexit and all of this stuff. And I'm sitting there going, but we're in Australia. Why would we care about it? It's not going to affect us. Yes, okay, maybe we don't agree with it, right? But we're not voting on it. It's not going to affect it. We can't change things. So I was sort of sitting there going, why are we getting bent out of shape about something that's we can't control? Like why do that? And I suppose a good example, and I know I mentioned social media and all of this stuff, and poor old social media, because it does do good things as well as bad things, right? I think the majority of it is bad, but anyway, hey ho, I'm the old grumpy old lady sitting here. But you only need to look at World War One and World War Two, right, where the media influenced a whole country, a whole, Nazi Germany was influenced by the media, but then also the Allies were also influenced by their media to look at Italy, Germany, and all of the countries that have clubbed together to dominate Europe, right, as evil people as well, right? Because otherwise, how are you going to send people out? Same with Kuwait and Saddam Hussein and all of this stuff, right? And all of the different wars and situations that we're in, right? To a certain extent, media and not all media. Sometimes media is good, but like media and
intentional propaganda. You have to propagandize people to get them to be willing to give up their life for a particular mission.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure with social media being on the scene that that's such the case nowadays, but who knows, right? But anyway, let's get on to a happier subject, right? How are we going to eliminate anger? I think we went down a rabbit hole there, Mort.
Okay. But no, the three filters is the key. Okay. Because once you understand the invisible causes of your anger that most people haven't seen before, once they know what they are, then you can step in and you can do this work of investigating whether they're true or not, and maybe or trying to reframe them, as you mentioned, and to look at it in a different way than what your brain is telling you to look at it, because your brain is just habitually conditioned to feed you certain perspectives based on your life experiences, and it doesn't mean that that's the truth about what's really going on. So if you can pierce through the narratives your brain is giving you, okay, and see what's really true. Like, for example, you said that earlier in the discussion today. You said you realized that the people who are driving slow, they're not doing it intentionally. They're not trying to.
They don't know who I am.
Keep you from getting where they don't know that you have some agenda, that you have to be somewhere. They don't know any of that stuff. Okay, they're not intentionally trying to do anything to you to inconvenience you. But if our brain tells us they are, we'll get angry. Okay.
Yeah, they don't know that at the end of the day, it's about getting to wherever I was going, a meeting or whatever. And I'm going, God, I need to get to this meeting, right? So it's all about me at the end of the day. But they might have been listening to a mega awesome podcast and wanting to extend their journey by 10 minutes so they could get to the end of it, right? Who knows, right? It's all about them. But there's this great book on anger elimination called the cow in the parking lot. Oh.
Okay. I don't know if you
no.
And it starts off with a story. It starts off with an analogy. A story is, you're going to the grocery store and the parking lot's full and you can't find a space and you're driving around and driving around and driving around. And finally, somebody's pulling out of a space and you see it. Okay. And you go for it. The space is open and you start to go for it. And all of a sudden somebody zips in from the other side and they slide into the space before you can get there, and then they kind of make fun of you that they got there first and they took it away from you. Again, you get furious. Okay, yeah, and they said, and the authors say, yeah, but suppose the same situation happened, and you were going for that spot that opened up, and a cow just walked over and just sat down in the spot, and you couldn't park in it. You'd have a different emotion if it was a cow.
I'd be, what is a cow doing in a parking lot? But no.
Yeah, but you drive around, you find another spot. You wouldn't get furious that the cow pulled in because it's a cow. It's not trying to do anything. But if it's a person, you're going to imagine all these, motives and this and that, and there's no, and you're going to build up this whole set of narratives that's going to make you crazy, all right, about what happened. Whereas if it was just a cow, you would have brushed it off and gone and found another parking spot. That's their point in the beginning of the book, by saying how we make ourselves angry and we don't have to. But habitually we tend to fall into these patterns.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah. So is it about reframing what's happening to you? What techniques can people put into place at the moment? So
anything that'll get you closer to the truth. Okay, so sometimes, for example, since all three of these things with anger are either or frames already, and they're already been set to one extreme, to see one extreme and to be totally blind to the other side of the spectrum. Okay, like I say, if you see somebody doing something that looks bad to you, it's not going to occur to you to consider whether anything might be good going on. You have a blind spot there. Okay, because of the either or frame. Well, one thing you could do is when you could take any one of these three frames or three filters, and you could just flip it to the opposite and start looking from there to see if you see anything that appears true to you, that there may be something. You could say, well, it looks bad. What if I looked at it? Could I see anything good here? Or could there possibly be anything good going on here? I see that person operating from bad motives. Is it possible they could have good motives that I'm just not seeing? So you could take any either one technique, you could take any either or framework, and you can flip it the other side. So you're seeing hurt and harm, negative impact as the second one. Well, what if somebody's not getting hurt and harm? What if there isn't a negative? I've worked with people where they've been surprised. They assumed they had a negative impact, and when we work through it a little bit and we dig into what's true and what's not true, it turns out they were actually positively affected by what happened, and they didn't realize it at the time. But now that they see it, they see the whole scope of everything that happened. The positive aspects of what happened far outweighed whatever negatives there might have been, and they had been blind to that before. Same thing with cause and effect. If you think the other person's totally to blame and you have nothing to do with it, flip that frame around and say, well, is there any way I could have played a role in whatever the behavior I'm seeing in the other person, let's say in a relationship that I don't like, and it's angering me? Could I have played a role in that, them behaving that way? And if you flip to that frame and start looking and telling the truth, you'll see that there may have been some things that you might have done, or things that you could have done that you didn't do, that could have influenced the situation. Because we have these filters create these blind spots that we can't see what's in them automatically. So we have to do some kind of mental gymnastic to invite ourselves to consider. It is almost like reframing, but you're not telling yourself that the other frame is true. You're saying, I'm going to try this frame on just as an exercise to see if I can see something that I agree with. And then that's really useful if you can do that. So it's not that you force yourself to do positive affirmations or adopt a positive frame. You invite yourself into a frame so you can look from that. It's almost like you're taking one pair of glasses off that has certain
foggy, horrible black filters on them.
Yeah, and you're just temporarily putting on another pair of glasses. So what happens if I would look from this perspective? Could I see anything that's real and true? Ultimately that's what you want to get at. You don't want to believe something just to believe it. You want to say, oh, okay, when I look at it this way, I can see that it's different than what I thought it was, or my brain told me it was. And you're really honestly saying, I can see that. I'm not making it up. I'm not forcing myself to believe something isn't true. I now see it differently because I shifted my viewpoint.
And if it's in a work situation or a relationship situation, even with a
Uh-huh.
parent-child situation, like,
Uh-huh.
is it that you can sit down and start to question, well, why did you do that? What was your intent? Like, um, just to try and understand what the other person thought they were doing and why, and to
Yes.
try and understand why you got angry as such from something that they were doing as.
Yeah, again, that's another, like I say, any strategy that'll get you closer to the truth or get you beyond your blind spots. And that's a common blind spot we have. We don't know what's in other people's hearts and minds and why they're doing what they're doing. We think we know, or our brain tells us, oh, they must be doing it because of this. And it's usually some negative, narrative. And like you say, if you just realize that your brain could be tricking you, and check out with the other person and say, hey, 'cause let me just ask you something. I mean, I'm looking at the situation and I'm thinking that you're doing this for this reason. Can you tell me if that's the case? Is it true, or do you have is there something else motivating you that I'm not seeing? And they'll often tell you, no, you got it wrong. I'm not doing it for that reason, or the reason you imagine I'm doing it for.
Yeah. And that is the thing, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of relationship issues come from you imagining that somebody is doing something or assuming that somebody is doing something for a particular reason. And
Yes.
therefore, um, it's around having that discussion, especially in relationship,
Yeah.
like partnership, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband and
Yeah.
wife
Now you
relationship.
don't you don't you don't always have to have the discussion, because you can sometimes figure out on your own that you made an assumption, and you can give the person the benefit of the doubt. Like for example, you didn't you in the car in the traffic example you gave, you didn't interview any of those. You didn't
No,
talk to any of those people.
I was going
You
too
changed your own
fast.
perspective. Yeah, you couldn't. But you changed on your own without their participation or agreement. You decided to see it differently and see them differently and consider that they were operating from other less, from more forgivable
Yeah.
motives, whatever they
I
were, than what you originally
suppose,
accused them.
uh, I suppose you need to be careful in certain situations because being in a narcissistic relationship or a domestic violence situation, I think the interpretation or
Yes,
assumptions get skewed because of
yes,
what that person is telling, the other person or whatever, and how that brainwashing potentially
yes,
happens. Um,
yes. And that's another example of where if you're on the receiving end of that, again, it's like another human being can give us a lot of false information or can brainwash us. We can do it to ourselves, okay? And we do it to ourselves. But when somebody's doing it to you, it's the same thing. You've got to be able to pierce through what they're telling you and recognize, well, what's really true here, okay? And for example, I've worked with another number of women who were in bad relationships, unhappy relationships, and they kept telling themselves, well, this person loves me. I can't understand why they're behaving the way they're behaving. But their belief was that they really loved them and they were loving individuals. Okay. And I had to shake them out of that to say, if you look at the behavior of this person that you're with, how they're treating you, that is not loving. That is not indicative of someone who loves you. That's another thing going on here. That's not love. You're still in this fantasy that this person really loves you and cares about you, and then it doesn't make sense when you look at it from that standpoint. But as soon as you see that it's not loving behavior that's coming your way, then you realize that this person has a problem, and they may not be a good partner. They may not be able to recover from this. Some can, some can't. But those are times when sometimes people need to get angry about how they're being treated enough that they stop allowing it to happen to them. They stop letting them be
yeah,
brainwashed,
I think
and
everyone.
maybe end up getting out of the situation.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think everyone has a sixth sense as to those sort of things. Like I think
Yeah.
everyone
has sorry, I'm sneezing here. I think everyone's got a sixth sense as to what is right and wrong, right? And I don't know what it's like embedded in us.
Yep.
And then and if you're having a too long a conversation with yourself around, like, well, hang on a minute, you're trying to persuade yourself that what you're feeling and thinking isn't correct and that the person does love you, et cetera, or, oh, that things will get better. Things ain't going to get better, people.
Yeah.
You
A
just
lot
got
of
to
times
get,
they're not. Yeah. A lot of times they're
and
not.
it might be that the person's not a bad person that you're with, right? It's just that they're not right for you, right? So we're not talking just
Yep.
about
Yep.
domestic violence situations, but that they're not just right for
Yep.
you. And therefore, if you've got that feeling, get out, get out. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair.
And it's not the easiest thing in the world for people to do, but you don't want to let yourself be bombarded by untruths, either from your own brain or from somebody else's brain. You know, trying to sell you something that isn't true.
Yeah, no, exactly, exactly. Do
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
so out there in the world, God love the world,
Yeah.
there are a lot of people who say, "Oh, you should go and meditate. If you're angry and you're stressed out, go and meditate, right? And go and do do you buy into that idea of relaxation meditation to actually eliminate anger?"
Well, I buy into it in the sense that there are good benefits from a lot of these anger management or stress management techniques. So if you want to do relaxation, deep breathing, meditation, tai chi, any of those kinds of things, they all have benefits, and they're certainly better than using alcohol or drugs or cigarettes or things like that, to deal with your, emotional upsets and stuff like that. But I don't think now meditation is a little different because meditation tries to get at some of the causative mechanisms in our brain. It tries to allow you to separate yourself from the stuff that your brain is sending you so that you can then look at it and examine it. So in that sense, it's good. Okay. As just a pure relaxation technique, that's nice. I mean, relaxing is good if you can, but it's not going to turn the faucet off, if you're still generating anger every day. You're going to have to keep doing more and more relaxation because you're generating more and more anger. So if you can ideally, if you could do both, if you knew how to turn the faucet off so you're not generating as much anger, and you could do meditation and other these have health benefits too. So a combination is probably better than trying to figure out which one is the best, because if I had to choose which one's the best, I'd say turn off the faucet. Okay.
100%, 100%, because I sit there and go, if you're actually trying to, when you're angry, trying to manage it, right? It's like,
Yeah.
so,
And we do whenever we do have to manage it because we live in a social world. So your anger impacts other people. It can impact your kids. It can impact your friends and your spouse and everything. And on your job. So you do have to manage your emotions in that sense immediately. But how the aspect of carrying it with you for days and weeks and months, ruminating about it, having it interfere with your sleep because you keep running it through your head. That's stuff you can eliminate, and you don't have to keep doing that.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, I agree. And I think we touched on this a little bit earlier, but like, is there ever a time where anger is healthy though? Because to me,
Yeah.
everything we've spoken about is all unhealthy anger,
Yes.
unhealthy anger that's going to destroy your relationships with your children, with your partner, with your work colleagues.
Yeah.
Could mean that
Yeah.
it's going to affect your job positions, all of these sort of things, right? Is there ever a time where it's healthy anger?
Yeah, it can. There's a lot of times when anger can be healthy. Okay, it can, as we mentioned, if you're in a bad situation, a bad relationship, and you're letting yourself be abused, and a lot of times it takes people to the point where they get really good and angry about what's going on, that they decide to say, okay, enough of this. I got to fix it or get out. And then it gets them motivated. So anger is a good motivator. It's also, I mean, you see it used in sports all the time. I mean, athletes will motivate themselves. Coaches will motivate their players by throwing chairs and having an anger fit, something like that in the moment. Okay. Now, if they did that all day long, they'd lose the respect of their players. But in certain situations, if you time it right, Same thing with raising kids. You don't want to be angry at your kids too much, but in certain situations, if your kid's about to run out into the street and not look where they're going, maybe anger might be an appropriate, response. Or when you're coaching them about not to make that mistake again, putting a little anger into it might help it be remembered. So there are times I haven't gotten angry much in the last 40 years, ever since I've figured this all out. But I'll still, if I'm talking to a customer service rep on the phone and I'm not getting the result that I want, I may pretend to be angry, because it'll drive them to either give me what I want or pass me on to a supervisor who will then give me what I want. So, I mean, there's a situation like that where sometimes anger can get you what you want, or in a negotiation can sometimes get you what you want. And also it tells people, it does let people know when they've crossed a boundary. Now, there are better ways, not always, but in many cases, there are other ways you can communicate that. But anger is one way that, at least, to tell somebody, you're not happy about what they're doing, or they've encroached on something. And that can turn out to be good if you don't let it get out of hand and let it get too crazy about it.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough.
Yeah. So there are some good aspects of anger, and in my book I have a whole chapter.
Well, I was going to say,
not just the bad aspects.
I was going to say, you've written quite a few books, and you just had a new one come out this year, which is called Life-Changing Anger Cure. Dr. Orman's Life-Changing Anger Cure, I should say, the full title, right? So that was released earlier this year. So where can people find more information, one, about you, and two, about your books? Because you've written a few.
Yeah, well, the books they can find on Amazon. If they just go to Amazon and put Life-Changing Anger Cure, my book will pop right up. Okay. But I have a free handout that I make available to people that talks about anger in general, talks a little bit about the coaching program that I have, where I work with people one-on-one. And that's what I based the book on. So I basically took everything that I teach, that I've been teaching in my anger program, and I put it in the book form. So you literally don't have to go through the coaching program. You can get the whole blueprint, everything that I teach, just from the book. So that's a handout that people can download, and all they have to do is go to theangersolution.org. theangersolution.org, and they can get that, and I'll get them on my email list, and I send emails out about anger and stress and stuff like that. So it's a good way to be connect with me, and also get some information, and also has some information about the book in the back of that handout.
Okay, brilliant. Look, thanks, Mort. Thanks for coming on board and talking to us about anger, because, look, at the end of the day, I don't think, everybody feels anger at some point in their lives, varying different degrees, and we all deal with it differently, I think, as well. Some of us go and punch a punch bag, some of us go and punch walls, some of us go and, I don't know, stitch or do 20 million sit-ups, or eat or do alcohol or drugs, which is not very constructive, go and walk on a beach, loads of different things that some of us could do. And I know during COVID, there were maybe a few more angrier people than there were saner people.
Absolutely.
So, thank you for coming and talking to us today about all of that. And go check out Mort's website and have a look and see if you're feeling a little bit angry about things. Then go check it out and see if you can eliminate anger and not manage it, I think is what we're saying.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Cool. Brilliant. Well, look, you have a great evening, I think it is, where you are. And
it is.
Yeah,
it is.
I've got to get on and start my day.
All right. Very good. Well, thanks for having me, and thanks for spreading this awareness, to the people in your audience, so that they have the chance to benefit from it.
No, our pleasure.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this podcast and you would like to hear more, please hit subscribe wherever you like to hear podcasts. If you would like to support us further, share this episode with your friends and family. And finally, drop us a review on iTunes, as I'd love to hear your thoughts, comments, and ideas. It all helps me to understand and produce awesome content you want to hear just like this. If you want to check out our past episodes, write to us, appear on the podcast, or for links, resources, and show notes, go to our website www.strongsingleandhuman.com. We are also on all the usual social media platforms, Insta, Facey, and Twitter. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I hope to see you back here again soon. Be kind to yourself, and remember, no one is perfect. We're all just putting one foot in front of the other and doing our best. I'm Claire Martin, and you've been listening to the Strong, Single and Human podcast.